Hey Jeff, how's it going?
It's very good to see you. Yeah, things
It's
going well. I'm a very busy guy these days, so
yeah,
there's plenty to talk about.
yeah, I'm so excited to see you and talk to you, and of course, hoping to get a chance to see you in person in less than a month now, and we'll talk about your upcoming tour with Yes. But just for all my friends and family and music pals who may or may not be in the Prague circle, let me take a moment and introduce a great musician, a great friend, Mr. Jeffrey Downs. Jeff has a lot of cool statistics about him that I'm going to share today. One of
Okay.
them being that you may know Jeff from the band The Buggles, which wrote the smash hit Video Killed the Radio Star and was the first video on MTV. And I was very excited as a young kid when my father helped me connect the dots between the fact that Jeff was also the keyboard player and composer of the album Drama by Yes. And then, of course, was the legacy band leader of Asia. So there was a period of time where I was like, wait a minute, Jeff was on this and this and this. And it was one of the things that made me fascinated about Jeffrey's career. And then, of course, Jeff rejoined Yes in 2011 and has been one of the key leaders of Yes since then. So, Jeff, it's been a fantastic ride. And for me, as sort of a younger generation prog fan and music fan, to be able to talk to you today is a great honor. So, thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, it all happened. It all happened very quickly, really, because you think Video Killed the Radio Star came out in 1979. We joined Yes in 1980, and then I formed Asia in 1981. So
Yeah,
that was three major projects or major bands that I was involved in a very short period of time. And
yeah,
thankfully, I can say to this day that they're all still going in some form or another, which is
absolutely.
pretty cool considering it's over 40 years ago that that I was going from one bang 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 like that. But I mean, yeah, it's I think the Buggles thing really opened the door for Trevor and I into Yes because I know that we had the same management. Brian Lane was
Right.
managing both the Buggles and Yes, and that's really how we got together with Chris Allen and Steve. They'd just come off a project that they were an album they were doing in Paris that didn't really work out, and so we literally just sort of morphed into them. And I think the drama album. I'm very proud of the drama album because I think that it brought out probably the some of the best in the other guys as well because I think they felt that they had to they got these two new guys in who had come from a different background, if you like, from certainly John and Rick, and so I think that they really felt they really wanted to bend over backwards and make it work, and I think
Yeah,
the net result was a pretty impressive album. I think it took
yeah,
Yes from the 70s, the previous album Tomato, it took Yes into a whole genre and I think bridged the gap between the 90125 album, we were kind
yeah.
of in the middle. It was almost like a turning point for Yes at that point. So I was very grateful to be, a part of that whole thing because, working with people like Chris and Alan and Steve was just a real,
Yeah.
it was a real honor. It really
Yeah,
was.
for sure. And as you know, as a drummer and as a Yes lover, that period of time is some of the best, most creative, and most kick-ass playing from Alan and from Chris and Steve. Just the ferociousness with an album like Drama, and like you said, setting that up for the big sort of '80s run. Drama is that pivotal turning point. It's one of my favorite Yes albums.
Oh, that's
I
great.
love when you guys did it. I'm very fortunate, actually. I got to see what we know I'm bouncing around a little bit here, but when Yes did the full drama album for the first time in the 2000s, and it was in England with Alan playing the full album, and I was able to be there for that. And it was soon after when he was health-wise unable to carry the full show, and of
Yeah.
course the excellent drummer who is now the drummer of Yes, Jay Shellen, stepped in. But I got to see the full album with Alan during the
Yeah.
UK tour a few years back. So
This
uh,
is great,
a
that,
fantastic
you know,
memory.
I really hit it off with Alan, not even on the drama album, and I think when I came back into the band in 2011, we had a great companionship, and I really miss the guy because he was such an influence and such a great, well, as you're a drummer yourself, how influential Alan was to a lot of people,
Yeah,
because he was very individual drummer. He wasn't he wasn't just a guy that played a backbeat. You know, he's very experimental, and so the combination of him and Chris, who was equally, you know, from that experimental area, it was probably the ultimate rhythm section to be behind you. You know, and of course Steve was a completely original guitarist as well. So, you know, putting all those elements together, I think that it was, you know, I was very, very fortunate to be able to come back and work with those guys again,
Yeah.
albeit, you know, for not too long with Chris, because obviously we lost Chris in 2015. But, you know, I mean, yeah, it's a been a great ride for me, and I'm very, very, very privileged to work with these guys.
Yeah. I'll make one other quick comment about Alan and you working together, and then we'll go on to the next topic. But there's a misnomer where people say, you know, Bill Bruford is the jazz prog drummer and Alan's the rock drummer, which is a very limited statement because, from my opinion, and I think honestly, in fact, if you go and you study the 70s and even 80s Yes albums, a song like Hold On, which is a core rock and roll song, where
Yeah,
Alan is taking things in so many different directions and polyrhythms over time signatures. Bill gets a lot of credit for that, which is fair, and he's one of the greatest of all time and one of my favorites. But I dare you to go listen to the play between the drums and the keyboards on Machine Messiah, or the
yeah.
way Into the Lens has all these crossing rhythms and melodies, and tell me Alan is just a rock drummer. I think folks have a lot to realize about that.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, Bill, obviously being the original drummer, was fantastically influential in those early albums, and obviously defining album Close to the Edge in many ways. But I think that what happened with when Alan came in, it made a different kind of band, you know, because
Yeah,
it did become it became a stadium band, you know. It was because he was such a powerful player,
so
you know,
big.
and such a big hitter. Yeah, I mean, Bill was very, very technical, you know, very kind of not light, but you know,
Right,
he
right.
had a very intricate method. But I think Alan was a real, you know, came in and combined with Chris, you know, it was a real ballsy rhythm section, and you know, I think that's why Yes carried on for so long, because they had that fantastic rhythm
Yeah,
section behind them, and I
yeah.
don't think you could ever, you know, you could ever change that.
I think that's a perfect segue because another reason why Yes has carried on so long through today is because of you, Geoff. And I have some cool statistics that I thought would be fun to share. So if you
Okay.
look back at Yes history, and it's reasonable why this is the case, but when Rick was in the band, they played songs mostly that Rick wrote and some of the stuff from the Yes album because it was so big. And when Patrick is in the band, he played some of Rick and Tony's work. And then Rick was back in the band and predominantly played his own work. But you, Geoff, have enabled Yes to go so far into the future because you have played everyone's music, including your own. And so I think that that has been pivotal to the flexibility of getting Yes to do so many different things since you joined in 2011. So here's some cool statistics. You've played at least 58 different songs on stage with Yes, which is far more than any other member of Yes in terms of
Well,
keyboard players. You played songs from 16 albums, which of course is more than any other member of Yes. And of course, based on the way history has gone, you've been on Drama and you played those songs live back then and today. But you've done everything from Yes, Time in a Word, the Yes album, Fragile, Close to the Edge, Tales, Relayer, Going for the One, Tormato, Drama, 90125, The Ladder, Fly From Here, Heaven and Earth, The Quest, and Mirror to the Sky. So your versatility, as opposed to sort of your willingness only to do your own music, I think is a key reason why Yes has survived in the 2000s when John Davison came into the band. Of course, Chris's passing, Alan's passing. You've been sort of a very steady leader in making that all possible. And I think that's a really cool statistic that you deserve credit for.
well, yeah, you've really done your homework on that, Joe. That's good news.
Why I
But
man, as Malcolm would say.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, from my own standpoint, I find it very interesting, just from a musicology standpoint, is that, you know, obviously when I first got into Yes was on the Time of the Word album, so Tony was my hero, you know. Tony had that real ballsy Hammond sound. I mean, he hadn't really got into the synthesizer side of things at that point, so I mean, there were not that much around, but to be honest, so it was a lot of it was electric piano, acoustic piano, and particularly Hammond was
Right.
Tony's signature. So I was really, you know, I still really admire Tony because he had that
Yeah.
sound, you know, and that really took Yes in a different direction, even in the early days. And of course, when Rick came in, it became much more technical musically, you know, and I think that certainly, you know, that was a different slant again. And then, you know, and obviously the iconic album, Close to the Edge, featured Rick very heavily and, well, as did Fragile, but certainly Close to the Edge was you know, a very defining album for Rick, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe not so much Tales because that was, you know, he sort of Tales became more, I think, a focus on Steve and John rather than the keyboards. But you know, that said, you know, Rick was a fantastic. I'm a great admirer of Rick's playing, and certainly moving on to the Reload album, you know, Patrick again was a different, completely different beast. You know, in terms of his input was, you know, a lot of jazz and you know, combined with classical, really jazz rock kind of approach. So, yeah, I mean, put those three guys together, and you've got a very, very diverse group of styles. So, what I do try and attempt to do is try and, apart from adding myself as well, because as you said, 5 or 6 albums that I've done with Yes, you know, I try and pull all that together, and as I say, it's a very, very interesting exercise because you really get into the souls of the other keyboard players, you know, and certainly, you know, I know them all personally, which is nice, and they've always been very, you know, all three of them have been very, very complimentary about what I do
Yeah.
in the band. So, you know, that's really rewarding from my standpoint because, you know, hopefully I'm doing something right by being able to channel all of these guys and, you know, try and encapsulate all their amazing contributions that they've made to Yes over the years.
Yeah. And there's a playing dynamic, and there's a sound dynamic, and there's a musical, you called it sort of compositional dynamic that you have to look at and fuse together. And I think, again, that's a big reason why Yes is continuing into 2025. And it's really brilliant to see you do that.
But yeah, and I think the other thing is that you know, I've known Steve for what 45 years now, and I think that the chemistry between a keyboard player and a guitar player is very, very important.
Yeah.
Steve is such an individual player that I think that, you know, obviously not just Yes, but of course we went through Asia together. So I think that we had a kind of, and still do, we have a sort of understanding between, you know, that balance of being, you know, lead. I mean, Steve's very much a lead player. I'm less of a lead player than say Steve. You know, Steve's always, you know, he's wilding away up the fretboard. So I think he appreciates my contribution, which, you know, at some stages is in a supporting role. But I think, you know, I think we get that balance right, whereby, you know, the sound of the two instruments together is very, I suppose you could say, you know, it's a very harmonious
Right.
combination, and so, you know, I think that's one of the key things why, you know, why I've stayed in the band as much as I have is because, you know, Steve and I have that sort of inert understanding.
Right. And I also think it's easy for folks to pick out the flashy part of a song. Maybe it's Steve going crazy on the neck, or in
Yeah.
1972, it's Rick on the Moog, right? But and I think you're adding so many layers of depth to the
Yeah.
music that that frontline soloing, it needs that body and that support, and the depth of the music is significant. So
Well, that's it. You know, I think my approach is quite orchestral. You know, and I
yeah,
think that you know, you know, as much as I say, you know, the styles of the other keyboard players that I try and encompass, I think it's as much to do with the sounds as well. You know, and I think
right.
that I'm very much into sound. I'm very much into technology,
Right.
keyboard technology in particular. Creating mellotron sounds and all of these sounds are really important to Gritty Hammond, as I said, mellotron, uh, mini Moog, lines. All of these things were very, very important to Yes. But all the way through, really, I think that it's always been a signature
Yeah.
sort of sound, having all these different textures. And so I'm very conscious of that I wanted to bring those textures to Yes and try and, keep that side of it alive and keep keep that sound going. It is very important to Yes that those textures, it's like Chris's bass parts, all those textures that he had, even if he goes through a tremolo or or Steve going through a Leslie cabinet or all of these different Alan bashing some piece of metal, just all these sort of textures I think of really what made Yes I think extra special. I think it's probably the only band that ever took it to that way. I mean, yeah, you could look at bands like Genesis who, you know, they were not really that experimental in terms of the sound they put together. I mean, they had some great sounds, of course, and I think the same, Pink Floyd, Rick Wright was, you had that drifty Hammond going on all the time, and Gilmore's lead stuff. But when you think about Yes, you think about all these different sounds that they use. I mean, maybe a lot of it was to do with Eddie Offord. I think was a major contribution to that because he was pulling those things out of everybody. Said no, don't just give me a guitar part.
Right.
Give me a I don't know, a sitar guitar or steel guitar. All of these sounds that Steve's got up his sleeve. I don't think there's many guitarists who actually are conscious of that. Steve can reach out and play a mandolin, or
Right.
and I think that Rick particularly, was mini Moogs and Hammond and piano, acoustic piano, electric piano. All sorts of different textures were very, very important.
Right.
And as I say, Alan, was, he had the big North drums at one point, and all sorts of different sounds. He had a little tree, bell trees,
Right.
and all
Bells,
of this stuff.
Fratelli.
I think it's really, really important. I mean, you look at a song like Awaken, or where Chris has got that triple neck, and the church organ and all these textures that came in. I mean, that's what made, to me, was what makes Yes, I think, one of the most innovative and extra special bands of all time.
That's fantastic. I love the analysis on that. It's great to hear that coming from you, who, as we said, had to approach all of this music. And so,
Yeah.
yes, let's look now towards just a few weeks away. Yes, in 2025, kicking off tour on
Here we go again.
October 1st in Connecticut, in our backyard. So you already know that my father and I will be there, and he will certainly make his presence known. So this is now the 2025 Fragile Tour. It's an album that you, again, played live with Yes back in the day with Chris and with Alan, of course, with Steve and John Davison. What could you tell us about the Fragile Tour in 2025 in terms of approaching this album? Anything particular that stands out to you? Of course, it was Bill Bruford at the time, and I know that Jay is the kind of guy that can really encompass both Alan and Bill. And of course, there's nobody out there who captures Chris Squire for both personal and musical reasons, the way Billy Sherwood does. So, what can you tell us about what to expect for Fragile coming up in just a few weeks?
Well, as you say, it was to go out with well, certainly the three original, well, not three original Yes members, but certainly Steve and Chris, from the Fragile album. I mean, that was amazing to go out with that. I mean, Alan has probably played Fragile a zillion times before, or some of the tracks off it, obviously. But I think it's going to be very interesting because Jay and Billy have really made an almost parallel rhythm section in
Yeah,
not a direct copy, but in the spirit of Chris and Alan, and I think
yeah,
that is going to carry really well. I think that the Fragile album is going to come across really well, and I think that obviously John is a fantastic singer, and he can pretty well do anything, and he knows Yes probably better than anybody knows Yes in terms of the lyrics and the melodies and everything like that. But I think that I'm really excited to revisit it again,
yeah.
particularly with this lineup. I mean, this lineup's been together for, I mean, Jay's been around since I think probably 2016. So Jay's been around nearly 10 years. Uh, and obviously Billy came in straight after we Chris passed. So uh, I think that it's going to be pretty exciting. I mean, some of the tracks, it's a pretty obscure album in a
It
way
is.
because
Yeah,
you think about Cans and Brahms, the solo pieces, the cameo appearances that each guy did, uh, with Bill's 43 seconds of 5% of nothing, which is just a crazy piece that I think that we play it and the audience go, "What the hell was that?"
right. Yeah,
Because of course they never did that before. I don't think Rick ever played Cans and Brahms. I don't think hardly ever, if ever. Uh, Steve obviously, Moved for a Day was something that he played in a lot of his signature pieces. And We Have Heaven, I don't think, other than the time we went out and did Fragile before, I don't think that that was even a consideration. So those, and of course Chris's uh, fantastic, the version of the bass feature. I think that, you know, what that album meant to me, because I was a student then when I was listening to that album, and I was at music college, and there was a guy called Simon, and he was the roadie for my college band, and and he just used to play it all day long. So I got
yeah,
kind of a bit sick of it because he said, "Oh yeah, I'll just turn it over," um, and he just sit there playing Fragile all day long. So I wouldn't say I got sick of it, but I got to know it very well, and I think
right.
that once you put aside those little vignette tracks, and then you've got the four big ones, which
Right.
actually support the whole album, and then you've got these little things in the middle. And I think those, the key tracks, obviously, Roundabout, you can't deny that being probably one of Yes's most famous pieces, and complete crowd pleaser, and it's hard to leave that off a set list. But Heart of the Sunrise, wow, that's always an absolute monster of a piece, and it's absolutely incredible. I mean, I love playing Southside the Sky. I think that's uh, again, is a huge feature for a keyboard player. Rick's piano parts are beautiful on that,
Fantastic.
and Long Distance, is another great piece. Shorter, but it's you know the contrast of all those pieces put together. I think that's really what made Fragile a special album for me.
Unique.
Was It was so diverse, and really, I think that was when Yes, well, it was actually when Yes really started to turn into something that was almost like a classical music band,
Right.
experimental, uh, unusual sounds. If you go back to the previous album, the Yes album was, not really that experimental in terms of sound. I mean, it was was a great album. I mean, I love the Yes album because Tony's playing on that. I think it's amazing. But Fragile was really the start of Yes being these kind of musical maestros, if you like.
The running order of the album makes it interesting to consider doing live. And of course, I'm sitting there thinking, are they going to open with Roundabout? Or and then follow up with a keyboard solo at the beginning of the show, or do you put that at the second half? So we're all excited to see what you
Yeah,
play in terms of what else goes into the set. And of course, that's all secret sauce. We won't reveal any spoilers today,
yeah. And
but
I
we're
think
very
that,
excited to see.
yeah, I think that we're pulling in some quite unusual tracks. I think, in addition to obviously to the whole of the Fragile album, and I think there's a few curveballs in there.
We
So
like that.
yeah, and I think that it might be a surprise to quite a few of the Yes fans because they think, wow, where did they pull that one out from?
That's great. I think,
So I think
yeah,
it's going to be a great tour. I'm really excited about it because I think that it's been a year since we went out. That was a bit more of a conventional tour with Deep Purple.
right.
This one is all about Yes, and I think that's great. So we're really looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
that's fantastic. I love hearing that with the anchor of Fragile and the big famous pieces there, there will be some curveballs and some
Yeah,
exciting things. I think fans are going to be excited to hear that. And coming out of this interview, hopefully that continues to generate a lot
yeah,
of buzz. So, folks, you got to go to yesworld.com where you'll see that Yes is kicking off their tour October 1st in Connecticut. We'll be there, man. And of course, going through, ending, I think it's Reno, Nevada in
yeah,
mid-November. So it's a
yeah,
good full 6 weeks of touring. And Geoff, I know we've only got a few minutes. We
yeah.
started off talking about a lot of things happening in the Jeff Downs universe. So I
Yeah,
would be,
well, it's been a year of making albums as well. As much as we went out with Asia early in the year, that was really exciting. We went to Japan and then we did these live albums. And I've got Asia's a great lineup at the moment. I think that Harry Whitley is a fantastic
fantastic.
performer, very young guy, but he's really taken on the role of John Wetton. He's done that amazingly well. Obviously, Virgil Donat is a top flight drummer, and John Mitchell the same. So it's a really good band, and I'm really happy with the way it's gone. We might do some more stuff next year. I think we've just been recording another album, so
Yeah,
that's going to come out next year. We've got the 3 live shows that we did at in the UK,
yeah,
where we did the first 3 albums in their entirety. So that was some feat.
yeah,
Uh, but
yeah.
on top of that, I've been working on another album with Chris Braid,
Wow,
DBA 6, I think,
it's amazing.
and that's going to come out in the new year as well as another Yes album. So it's been
Wow,
a very very busy time of me focusing on new music as well because I think that you've got to keep experimenting and the spirit of Yes has always been about that. I learned that in a very early stage when being in the band with drummers that it's all about experimenting with new music and so I feel
yeah.
very privileged that we're still doing that. We're still going ahead and we're going out and playing our music to lots of wonderful people.
That's fantastic. So three major projects with original music, Yes, Asia, and DBA. You mentioned the live albums. Now, at least in your mind, do you look at 2026 and have it sort of compartmentalized? We're going to release Yes at this point. We're going to have Asia at this point. Do you have that sort of lined up, or is that all still being worked out for
I
you?
think there's sort of place, there's pieces of the jigsaw being put together. It's not all in place yet, but
Right.
certainly I think it's gonna be another busy year, hopefully, and as long as people come out to see us and they're happy to appreciate the music, then I'm happy to go out and perform it as long as I can.
Absolutely. And we'll be there to support you, my friend. Last
Brilliant.
question, then. I think the Yes fans would kick me if I didn't ask this, which is, do you think the Yes album comes out early in the year, or is it more towards middle or late of the year?
I'm not sure yet. I think that it's virtually we're getting towards completing it, but there's obviously bits and pieces that are
Yeah.
things develop. So I hopefully it will be certainly early-ish in the spring, maybe,
Great.
or a bit later. But it's really down to the record label once they
Yeah,
they
yeah.
look at it and say well we could whether we're touring at the same time or it's all. As I say, it's pieces of the jigsaw that are getting
Yes.
put together. I tend not to get involved too much in that. I just sort of sit back and say, yeah, just shove me on a plane somewhere. And tell me the songs I'm supposed to be playing.
I hear you. That's wonderful. Well, Jeff, I really sincerely appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
No
I
problem.
appreciate meeting you back in 2011 and almost now 15 years later, being able to interact with you, see you play in all the different projects as a supporter, and get to connect with you on a friendly level. Of course, folks may have realized that Jeff and I share the same birthday, August
We
25th. So
do.
happy birthday to us.
Yeah. Happy
And
birthday.
really appreciate everything, Jeff. We'll see you in a few weeks
We'll see you in a few
in
weeks.
Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, as we
All
always
right. You're going
do.
to come to a few. Brilliant. Brilliant. Look forward to
I
it.
think I'll be in at least four,
All right. Okay. Good man.
as we do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. God
Okay.
bless,
Yeah.
and we'll
Thanks a
see you
lot.
soon.
Cheers,
Take
Joey.
care.
Nice to see you. Say hi
Bye
to your
bye.
dad.
I
Okay.
will.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers, man.